Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mysterious Galaxy virtual event. I'm Nick, one of the booksellers and the digital marketer. Sorry, I forgot myself. A digital marketer for Mysterious Galaxy. I am joined tonight with Robb Pearlman and conversation partner Erin Macdonald. Thank you so much for joining. Robb Pearlman is a New York Times bestselling author, editor, and pop culturist. He has written more than 30 books, including Star Trek, Fun with Kirk and Spock, What Would Skeletor Do?, Nerd Haiku, and Rick and Morty's Book of Gadgets and Inventions. Erin Macdonald, PhD, astrophysics, is an internationally recognized space science expert, writer, speaker, and consultant. Tonight, we are here to discuss and celebrate Robb Pearlman's latest book. I have to make sure it gets on camera. Live like a Vulcan, love like a Wookiee, and laugh like a Hobbit. Life lessons from pop culture. Awesome. All right. Before we get officially started, a reminder for everyone, if you have a question that you wish to ask our lovely people here, go ahead and hit the button below that says ask a question. That's where they'll be eventually pulling from your questions. If you put them in the comments section, most likely not going to see them. And then also down below is going to be a green button that says buy books with signed personalized book plates. Mr. Robb Pearlman is going to be offering signed and or personalized book plates for anyone who orders the book. So please go ahead and do that. Without further ado, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you at the end.
All right. Thank you. Hi, Robb. Hi, friend. So you're on mute right now, by the way. It popped up. Hover over your face.
How about now?
You're good. Perfect.
You're the scientist. I don't know how to do these things.
It's all right. That's why you keep me around.
Pretty much.
So I am so thrilled to facilitate this conversation about this wonderful book. Robb and I got together about a week and a bit ago to kind of talk about some questions and ideas for this. And they're all good questions. And then I read the book and it destroyed my heart and soul in the most beautiful way. And I love everything about this book. I'm so excited to talk about it. So the questions will be a little less soulless and I'm going to try not to cry because it's so good.
If you start crying, then I start crying. It's going to be a thing.
It's going to be a thing and everyone's going to feel real awkward. But first off, do you want to just kind of tell people what the book is about in general?
Oh my God. Yeah, sure. So it's about life, love, and what we watched, really. It's all about the life lessons that you can get from all of your favorite pop culture things. That's sort of the elevator pitch.
That's fair, but it has a really interesting envelope. So you've written a lot of fun, great pop culture books. I was not expecting long form, I guess. Like I opened it up and it was like, there's lots of words on the page and not many pictures. And I mean that as a compliment. But so it takes place at a convention, essentially, and it's a conversation between characters who are a Vulcan, a Wookiee, a Hobbit, and an elder, as you put, a nondescript elder. What made you choose those characters and then have the first person interact with them?
Well, I think it's important to note that the people are cosplaying as a Vulcan, a Wookiee, and a Hobbit. And the elder, it's kind of unclear whether he's sort of cosplaying as an elder or he just is an older person, really. You know this, but writing is a really weird thing. You know, you're very isolated when you're doing it, and you can start off thinking what you're writing is one thing, but as you're going through it, and you're working out the kinks and you're really getting all your thoughts out there and organized, you realize that the work itself is telling you something, it's completely different than what you thought it was going to be in the first place. So you go back and you revise it and you rewrite it, rewrite it. It's 10 o'clock here, folks. It's super late. And at least in this case, I was still trying to fit it into what I thought the book was. And then I realized that it wasn't going to be what I thought it was going to be in the first place. So I needed to try to work with what it was telling me to do to make it the best representation of really what it is. So that's a really long, complicated answer, but it all comes back. The basic idea of the book started, I had to look this up because writing a book is a really long process. So the kernel of the idea came in November of 2018. So it's like 2 years to the date almost, basically, give or take a day. I posted something on social media, 3, oh my God, it's 2021. See, time and space have no meaning. It's 3 years. Let's say 3 years for the week. We'll go with that.
That works.
So I had posted something on social media about how most of the Scooby-Doo villains were really just old white guys trying to hang on to their money. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of cute. So the first few drafts of the book were these kind of like really short, kind of like meme-like notions. And I had sorted them all by property rather than idea. And it just wasn't working at all. It felt like, okay, this is the Indiana Jones section, and then this is the Stranger Things section, and here's the Scooby-Doo section. And it just felt really disjointed. So, I'm a reader too, and when I'm writing something, it's super important for me to remember that when you're asking someone to buy your book, you need to respect the time and the money that they're putting into it, and reward them for that. It needs to feel like a satisfactory experience. And I felt like the readers who were going to be interested in the book deserved a structure that would take them from idea to idea rather than by property to property. And I needed to figure out a way to sort of like weave a narrative thread between each of the ideas. And then the whole thing could sort of be held together like one gigantic geeky quilt, all the little panels going together. So, I've used narrative structure in my children's books. And though the books that I've written for grownups, they totally hang together and flow in their very own ways, I've never tried something exactly like this, sort of a long form narrative story, which was exciting and challenging and super scary. But once I started getting into it and I took a step back, I realized that overall structure of sort of weaving it all together that way was really mirroring a lot of everyone's favorite shows or TV films or films and TV shows, because like each episode or each part of a trilogy, it's its own thing. But when you put them all together, they're telling one bigger, complete, long form story. So there was something going on with two levels, that everything was propelling both the large and the small stories forward. And it was terrifying, but it was really cool to sort of stretch that muscle in my brain.
Well, I think it was incredibly successful, and I've been trying to work out why I reacted so viscerally to it. I mean, it was a lot, but in a good way. And I think what it reminded, it was exactly what conversations with friends and strangers is like at a convention. It really was exactly that. And that's what was so beautiful about it. And you and I met originally on the Star Trek cruise in 2018, I think. And
which, according to my math, was 6 months or 9 years ago. So either way.
Right. Exactly. But it really is. I think that's what's so great about this book is it just feels like a very natural way for people like us who live and breathe pop culture, as people can probably see in our vistas here, that it brings people together. You have that instant connection. You have an instant reference base to it.
Yeah.
As you were going through these sort of life lessons in different pop culture franchises. What drove you to set it at a convention?
I think at its most basic level, conventions are just such a safe space for people to be themselves, and to have the kinds of conversations with reference points that everybody around them is going to understand. So whether you're going to a convention with a bunch of friends, whether you're going to a convention with someone in your family who is a bigger fan of something than you are, or isn't interested at all, but is just going there to support you, or if you're going to one of these things alone, you're going to find a bunch of people there that you can talk to and relate to on an interest level about a fandom. But then I guarantee you within 15-20 minutes of talking, you're going to find all of these other crossover points where you're sharing common experiences or life stories or viewpoints. And I think it's an amazing place for people who would not normally meet in person or virtually to be in each other's company and to grow from that experience. There are people, we've seen this firsthand. We've seen people from literally all over the world, from all different kinds of socioeconomic situations, with different life experiences, getting together, having a good time, just leaving all of that mishigas behind them and having a good time and building these incredibly deep and long-lasting friendships, that just started with the kernel of, oh, I like Star Trek, you like Star Trek, let's start talking about it.
Yeah, one of my favorite memories that this really reminded me of was when I was a guest at one of the many conventions, and I had given a talk on Mass Effect, the video game series, and there were a bunch of people afterwards, probably like 5 or 10 people afterwards, that were just kind of all hanging around and meeting each other and like talking to me and asking me questions. And then it was like I was going out to lunch but didn't know anyone, so we all just went out together and just ended up sharing all of our Mass Effect stories. And some of those people I'm still friends with. Like,
yeah,
that's what happened. I mean,
it's so incredible. It's like nothing else out there, really.
Yeah, it really is.
You can go to a party or you can go to a movie and have this shared experience, and then for the most part, you're never going to see those people again. But if you're there because of your shared passion and love of something, that sense of community, it seeps into everything. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking all in the wonderful, beautiful aspects of fandom, but really early on in the book, you have a moment where someone makes a disparaging comment about the rebooted Star Trek films, and one of the characters in response says, like, well, it's not your enterprise, but it's someone's enterprise. And I just thought that was such a great way of summing up how people experience fandom differently. But can you talk a little bit about like wanting to include that aspect in a book about fandom and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, part of the joy of fandom for me, and I think the vast majority of people, is sharing your passion for a thing with other people. You want to invite more people to the table. You want bigger conversations. You want the tent to be as big as humanly possible, or Klingon possible, or Vulcan possible, or Ewok possible, because you want to just make that party bigger. You want to enjoy it with as many different perspectives and points of appreciation that you possibly can. I don't understand people who take the time and derive pleasure from keeping other people from liking something that they like. I just, first of all, I don't have the time to gatekeep. You want to like something, like it. That's great. You don't want to like something, or you don't like something, that's totally fine. But just
Right.
because you don't like something, don't tell me I can't like it. Like, I don't understand that kind of thing. So the toxic fandom, which sort of, comes and goes depending on if there's a new TV show or a new movie, or if there's a reboot and people's experience is in some way challenged, or it's not the same thing that they've always been getting. I get it. I get protective over things too, but just because something isn't 100% for me doesn't mean it's not 100% for someone else.
Yeah.
So don't yuck on other people's yum. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
And I think too, it's so important when there is something that you don't like, ask yourself, what value am I bringing by even disparaging it? Even by saying, oh, I didn't like that. Like that, that's just gonna make someone not feel comfortable in embracing their own nerddom.
Yeah, if I don't like something, I'll be honest and say, it just wasn't for me, or it didn't scratch that itch. I'm much more interested in why people like things. And I don't mean like, why do you like that? I mean, it's like, tell me why you like that. Like, in what way is that speaking to you? In what way is this version of something different for you than the version of it that I know better is? And the thing that other people love that I may not love may be their entry point into the thing that I love. So that's great too. It's totally great.
And that's like, I mean, the fact that you used that 2009 Kelvin Star Trek film as an example was perfect, because I think that did draw so many people into Star Trek fandom who then did go back and discover. But pivoting from the diehard fans who get every single reference and sentence in your book and can follow the conversation, how was it difficult, or do you think that this book, for people who don't live their life through pop culture necessarily, like, do you think there's still ways that new fans or people who might just be into Star Wars, for example, can still access and get stuff out of this book?
Oh, yeah, totally. I wanted the book to appeal to as wide a variety of people as possible. I've written enough books to know that you can't appeal to everybody, because if you really try to do that, you wind up appealing to nobody, and that benefits nothing at all in the world, really. So you really have to have a point of view. But you also have to acknowledge that, kind of like what we were talking about, people have different entry points. People have different levels of familiarity and knowledge with things. So I stuck in as many deep cut Easter eggs as I possibly could. And if you see him, you see him. And if you know him, you know him. But if you don't, that's totally fine. Because sometimes it's just a turn of phrase or a specific word in a specific context that, a Trekkie's going to get. But, I think what I'm talking about, what the characters are talking about in the book, are pretty universal. So as long as you're a fan of something, you're going to find something in the book. At least I hope. So did you think that?
For sure. I mean, but there were definitely, like, for example, I'm not as much into comics, like, certainly not. The only comics I've read have typically been Marvel or like graphic novels. So like DC references, I just know from general absorbing of other people talking about it. And but again, that's what it felt like. It just kind of felt like, because the conversation flows so naturally from like, oh yeah, and this is like when Superman did this, and it's like, oh yeah, well that's when Thor did that, and so all of those little threads, you're able to follow that as one coherent conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. Part of what I was thinking as I was writing it, especially because it was set at a convention, and we should say the book is really set at the end of an evening, when people are sort of gathering together. But I think I made it pretty clear, like, they had been walking around all day. And
Right.
one of the things I wanted to replicate as much as I possibly could was the experience of walking through a convention. Because when you do that, you're totally gonna recognize a bunch of things, but you're definitely not going to recognize even more things because fandom is so huge, and especially at a place like San Diego, where there's 1,000 different, little vinyl toys and video game things from 30 years ago, or Japanese anime. Even if you don't get it completely, even if you don't know, even if you haven't watched 7 seasons of that thing, it's a thing. Because other people seem to be liking it and talking about it or dressing up as whatever it is, and it has some sort of value for someone, even if it doesn't mean anything to me. And when I see that kind of thing at a convention, I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
I want to know, what's that thing with the hat on? Like, is that a thing? All right, I'll take a picture. I'll research it later.
Yeah, that's how I discovered Avatar: The Last Airbender. Was like a ton of Avatar cosplayers at Dragon Con, and I was like, "What is that?" And went home and watched the whole thing and love it.
Yeah. When I was at New York Comic Con in our Smart Pop booth just last month, and we were facing a giant My Hero Academia wall, and it was just like this gigantic wall, and tons of people were coming by and taking selfies in front of this gigantic wall with this logo on it. And I was like, I have no idea what this is, but other people seem to like it. So every time like a cosplayer was coming around, we were like, who's that? What's going on there? It was educational. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And also I recently discovered My Hero Academia. It lives up to the hype. So
okay. I'll put it on the list.
There you go. So as I was reading this, it's about 100 pages ish. I would say I started to get wrecked. Exact. Thank you. The math in me loves that. I started to get wrecked pretty much at page 32.
Oh no, what did I do on 32?
Which is really early on, when they're talking about grief and how pop culture has helped us understand what it means to leave a legacy, between like from the memories that it gives us. And without getting too dark, but like the characters in the book will pivot to lighter things. But I imagine that was a difficult chapter to write. It meant a lot. It felt like there was a lot of humanity in that, and it certainly resonated. You pulled out the quote from WandaVision, which cynical people malign, but is genuinely, I think, one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is, "What is grief but love persevering?" And I think that's so beautiful. But I was wondering if you could just talk about that kind of section for a bit, because it was really poignant.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It was really hard to write. When you're writing something, and again, sort of going back to earlier, like you think you want to say one thing. And the first go at it was kind of light, and it wasn't, when I looked back on it, it didn't mean anything at all. And maybe it was because I was going through my own grief process and I didn't want to deal with it very much. And then I was really thinking about it, and I thought, what would I want to read if I was reading this book? And what do I need to tell myself about this? Because it didn't just, no one sort of whispered in my ear, write about grief. Up until now, it's like, happy book, and we're at the convention, and grief. I mean, there are topics, around it of all emotional levels too, but it would have been easy to not include it. And I thought that didn't feel particularly authentic. It didn't feel true to my experience, and it probably wouldn't feel true to someone else's experience. I think hearing that line in WandaVision meant something to me, and it meant something to a lot of other people. And I think when you're going through a rough time, as many of us do, and as we all did as a world these last couple of years, you need to find a little bit of joy and a little bit of connection where you can find it. So watching that last scene in the last episode of The Mandalorian, when you know who shows up, no spoilers, after that happened, and I was literally just standing and cheering in my house all alone, I realized that was the first time I wasn't super sad about something in months.
Wow.
And that really hit me. And I was like, that's what pop culture can do. It's this common language. And if I was feeling okay for those 5 minutes, I bet a lot of other people were feeling okay for 5 minutes too.
That's awesome.
So when it came to the grief thing, I needed it to feel authentic to the topic, but I also thought it needed to feel authentic to a shared experience.
Absolutely. And the best thing about it is just, I don't want to give too much away, but the sort of end message, is how hope feeds into our lives. And then just having that as a kind of thread that you're able to hang on to is great. One more really interesting part I felt for me, the book is really anchored in anxiety. That's kind of like the grounding of it, that your character's very anxious about going in by themselves and sitting alone with someone and then a group of people. And then that kind of threads through, but you have a whole section on anxiety. And I was wondering if you can I really loved your quicksand and swamp metaphors. If you want to give a quick overview of kind of what you talk about, and we're not totally giving up the whole book because this quick sentence is like riddled with 1,000 references that are all worth reading, but your quicksand and swamp analogies I just thought were so good.
Thanks. So I don't know about you, but I grew up watching a lot of TV shows, especially on the weekends, where quicksand was everywhere. Like whether it was, F Troop or, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, like you always had to be wary of quicksand. It was going to be everywhere.
I remember learning that you lie on your back. It's mostly water. Like that's how you get out of quicksand.
Yes. Don't panic. It's one of the reasons I hate going to the beach, because it's sand and you never you can just sink right into that stuff. And then, as you grow up and you go to the beach a couple of times and you just walk around in everyday life for 20, 30 years, you realize the chances of you encountering quicksand are really, really small. The chances of you encountering a swamp, however, is a lot higher. I mean, Florida is mostly swamps, from what I understand. I'm bad at maps, but it looks really green and muddy in swaths of it. So I thought, okay, so the anxiety that this character and me often face is there's going to be quicksand everywhere. I'm going to go to this party. I'm going to sink in the quicksand. I'm going to do this. I'm going to sink in the quicksand. And because it's quicksand, there is absolutely nothing around to save you, right? There's like a bush over there, and maybe someone walking, a mile away. So you're on your own, like you're in the middle of it. You're toast. But if you're in a swamp, which is much more likely, you're going to sink a lot slower. And there's a ton of stuff all around for you to pull yourself up. And there's going to be a lot more people as well to help you out. So if you're anxious, think of the pitfalls around you less as quicksand, where it's going to be incredibly slow, incredibly painful, and you're going to be all alone and not be able to get out of it. Think of it more of a swamp, where it's going to be even slower. There's going to be lots of ways for you to get out of it. there's going to be lots of people to help you out of it, and those people are going to be in the swamp too, so you can sort of like collectively get out of the swamp. So life is more swamp than quicksand.
I love that. I think that's great. I'm gonna be using that, so it's good. We're gonna jump to some questions here, reminding to people watch, if you have questions, you can click the ask a question and we'll get to those. But our first question is, you said it took a while to finally get what you wanted in this book. How many times do you think it took to rewrite the book?
Oh God, I mean, I would still try to rewrite the book if I could. There came a point where my editor was like, stop. Rachel, an angel on heaven, was just like, this is good. Like you've made your point clearly. Stop tweaking it. It's totally fine. I don't think I rewrote the whole thing more than twice, but there were sections I probably worked on 5 or 6 times, I think, just because I wanted to get it as right as I possibly could.
Gotcha. Do you, we can both answer this one, but do you have any favorite convention memories that you drew upon for the book?
Oh my gosh. All right. I've got 3 that are super important.
Settling in.
Settle in, because this might take a couple of seconds. One of my favorite memories was at my very first San Diego Comic-Con. I'd never been to one in San Diego before. I had no idea what to expect. I get there, and this was probably 10 years ago, maybe 13, 14 years ago. So it was big. It wasn't as big as it is now. So like you were able to get a hotel room the week before.
Right.
Shocking.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow. It's before the times. So we get there, we're settling in. It's the first day. I'm very excited. I had a lot of coffee in the morning, not gonna lie. So I needed to use the men's room, and I just, we got in the door, I made a beeline for the men's room, and I realized I am standing next to this mountain of a man who's dressed as the Incredible Hulk, like all in green, the purple pants. And I was like, this is my life. Like, I love it here. This is great.
I'm home.
I'm home.
Yeah.
So that was really great. And then, one of my absolute favorite things, and you've experienced this on the cruise,
Mm-hmm.
you get to talk to all of these fans.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible to hear, how much Star Trek means to them.
For people who aren't familiar, the Star Trek cruise is essentially a week. It's like 7 days. 7 days. It's great, but it's 7 days,
7 days
on a boat, and it is just Star Trek themed. So it's not like a little portion of the cruise or anything. It's the whole thing is Star Trek themed. All of the decorations in the ship, everyone is there, or at least brought by someone who loves Star Trek. And they do programming that you and I both take part in, and talking about books, but we do fun, wacky things because you have 7 days to fill. So you get to do lots of fun, weird, different events that you don't normally get to do at a convention and stuff. But anyway.
And it's fantastic. And, after I'm on a panel or we're on a panel, we get the chance to talk to the other fans. And we talk to them on a fan level. Like, it's just incredible. It's like, oh, I remember that scene, or remember that, or I just love it. Like, you get to connect with people in really concentrated but meaningful ways.
Yeah.
So that's always great for me.
One of my favorite memories from that is because one of the things that they do is they do like regular quizzes that will be 2 times a night, I think. And one of the guests will be like co-hosting the quiz. And so we'll go to support our friend who's co-hosting it. And I think we were all sharing a table when Mary Chifo was doing the quiz. And they were asking like these, and the place is packed. And we're there like legitimately answering Star Trek trivia because we know a lot of Star Trek trivia, surrounded by a lot of other people. But the question they asked, and so there's probably maybe a couple hundred people in the whole vastness of the area. And the question got to the point where it was like, what was the planet where Beverly Crusher's grandmother was buried? What was the name of the planet? And one voice way in the back went, woo! They've been waiting their whole life to be asked that question. And we lost, the whole place lost it, because we all knew that feeling. It was so fun.
It was so pure. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
So good. I love it. Any other stories you want to just share? You said you had a few.
I mean, some of them are not really appropriate.
That happens too.
Sometimes what happens at the con stays at the con. When I did my Body by Starfleet event.
Okay.
I had a bunch of people on stage in various Star Trek costumes, like doing jumping jacks with me. This
and
is
you
my
were
life.
such a sport, because it was like an exercise Star Trek book, and you had like the full 80s headband.
I did.
It was delightful.
I did. Thank you.
That was very fun.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
It's so easy to think of happy con experiences. Because even like the not so great moments, you're like, still all together, still having a good time.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Exactly. I remember one time at Dragon Con, it was one of my less pleasant Dragon Con weekends, and I was kind of burnt out, and it was the Monday morning, and I just went to the Star Trek room to kill a couple hours before my flight, and they were doing some seminar on religion and Star Trek, and I was like, all right. And there was maybe 10, 15 people. It was early. Everyone's hungover. And it just ended up being this like group deep discussion about like if the Pa Wraiths like intentionally like led Kai Wynn to be ignored by the prophets, and it just became like, it turned the whole day around. I know. It was really fun. All right. So moving on, were there any cosplay or convention archetypes that didn't quite make the cut for the book?
Not really. I mean, everything, I felt like everything was fair game, because it all sort of went together, and all of those cosplayers would have naturally at least been in one another's orbit, really. I'm sure there will be comments on Amazon or wherever. How could you not include this thing? It's like, I'm sorry, like I had 100 pages to fill. I couldn't do everything in the world. I put in as much as I possibly could. Yeah, I mean, I think the 5 main character, 4, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Math, man. The 5 main characters were sort of the archetypes I really wanted to focus on. And they all tell different stories about the things that they love, especially Star Wars, Star Trek, and Lord of the Rings. And within that, I think I was able to cover a lot of ground for other sort of cosplaying tropes or other interests, and other archetypes. So I didn't feel inhibited in any way, because I felt like at a con anything goes. And in this kind of book, where I wanted people to see themselves as much as possible, I wanted to give everybody a little something to hook onto.
What came first, the live, love, laugh, or the Vulcan, Wookiee, and the Hobbit?
It's funny. So here's a little bit of inside publishing baseball. The first title of the book was Fly Casual.
Love that.
Because I was like, you go into a party and you're super nervous, but you've got to sort of like fake it till you make it. So you just fly casual up until the Death Star. And how do you do that? And then not enough people knew what that was. And I was like, oh, that's upsetting. I I knew the cosplayers were going to be a Vulcan, a Wookiee, and a Hobbit.
Okay.
And I just loved the way those 3 words went together. So the first go at it was a Vulcan, a Wookiee, a Hobbit walk into a bar, which I thought was funny. And then everyone around me, again, the power of the editorial process, was like, it's a funny title, but it sounds like a joke book. And I was like, this is not a joke book, so that's a bad title. Yeah. And then I wanted, I was going for like some like sort of pat self-help things. And I was like, those live, love, laugh plaques are ubiquitous, but they're also earnest. But they're also kind of mockable a little way. And I was like, wait a minute, live, love, laugh. Like that lines up perfectly with a Vulcan, a Wookiee, and a Hobbit. And that was just sort of like a Thor flash at the moment. And I was like, yes. And the minute we came up with it, it was like, it felt like that's what the title should have always been.
Yeah. And for anyone curious, it's in the book. If you want to know what loving like a Wookiee is like, it's answered in the book. That was my first question.
Yeah, that's not one of those what happens at the con stays at the con. It's about love.
Exactly.
I wrote another book about the other kind of love. That's
yeah, you did. Yeah. For someone who has never been at a convention, do you have any tips for them? I think this really captured the convention experience. So
thank you. You've really got to wear comfortable shoes. Don't care what they look like. They've got to be super comfortable. You've got to stay hydrated. You have to be prepared to wait online for everything, for at least a little bit. So I would always bring something to read. Even if you're with somebody, small talk is going to get a little boring after an hour or so. And you just have to sort of give yourself up to the experience. If you're going to get upset because you're not getting from point A to point B quick enough, I don't know what to tell you. Like, cons can often be frustrating experiences, but the joy and the enjoyment you can get out of it, if you just sort of like, this is what it is, it's going to make the whole thing worth it. And then just go with an open mind and have fun. Take pictures of everything, with the understanding that not everybody is going to want to see them once you get home, but still you're going to want to relive the experience.
Yeah,
really. Yeah, and I'd say support those small little booksellers at the convention, or those independent artists. They really need the help and the exposure, and appreciate the conversation too.
Be prepared. Have enough wall space when you come back. We have rotating poster now. Yes. Have to take turns. Because I'm a math person, my rule is the 5-2-1 rule, which is every 24 hours, get 5 hours of sleep, eat 2 full meals, and shower once. And you know what? At a convention, that's really hard to hit those numbers.
It really is.
Like, oh, yeah, I haven't slept in 24 hours. Okay, I'm going to go take a nap.
Yeah.
And a shower.
I am not a breakfast person at all, but when I'm at a convention, I make sure before I go to the convention center, I have breakfast.
Yeah.
Because who knows when you're going to eat again.
Yeah. Your day will disappear so fast. Yeah.
Also, forget about your diet.
Oh, yeah.
Because no.
Doesn't exist.
My
favorite pictures to take at a convention are like the cosplayers, but the cosplayers in like normal human circumstances. So like Black Panther eating a pizza, or like Emperor Palpatine drinking a fruity cocktail. Like,
yeah.
Those are my favorite.
Great. Is that Darth Vader at the Starbucks? Yes, it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Sipping it through a straw from his mask. It's great.
Yeah, so good. So speaking of finding joy, was there anything you discovered in the last 2 years that sparked joy for you? Maybe added to your pop culture lexicon?
Oh my God. I mean, Mandalorian was pretty great.
Yeah.
Star Trek Prodigy, loving that. Shout out to Dr. Erin.
Thank
you. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. I really dug Black Widow.
Yeah,
I really did. I watched it numerous times and enjoy it every time it happens. Squid Game. I mean, not the feel good thing, but it was what I needed at the moment. So that was a good thing.
Fits
what about
the
you?
Spot. I fell into the Ted Lasso. We have a Believe poster.
Oh
now.
My God! Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. That just was everything we needed right at the right time. It was perfect.
Oh my God! And Loki.
Loki, geez, oh man, is that show good? Oh,
so good.
So good. Also have a TVA shirt now.
Yeah.
And a Loki tattoo, but we don't have to get into that. Oh yeah, and a tattoo, but that's beside the point.
Oh,
yeah.
That.
Yeah, last question in here, and people feel free to add some more if you want. But is there anything you're currently reading right now?
Oh yes, I'm reading The Song of Achilles.
Ooh,
nice. Super good. And then next on my to read pile is Foundation.
Nice. Yes.
Yep.
Are you watching the show or?
I watched one. Yeah, I watched one episode, and I'm like, I think I want to read the book first. So that's in the bank. I'm going to read the book, and then I'm going to go back to it.
Yeah, it's we're watching the show. I'm enjoying having a new, even though the story's not new, but having a new like hard sci-fi. Like I haven't kind of had that since probably The Expanse started.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Plus, anytime Lee Pace comes on a TV show, you're like, okay,
dude,
I'm gonna enjoy it. Yeah.
I was telling my friend about that because Lee Pace was, which we should also talk about this because this was really funny in your book. But Lee Pace is a new discovery for me, and I mentioned this to a friend. And I was like, I'm surprised that this passed me by, and she's like, well, if you want to get into him, you have to watch this, then you have to watch this, then you can watch this. You probably want to miss this one, and this, and just like the whole thing. It was great. Yeah. Before I get into that, though, I just finished Jade War by Fonda Lee. I think the third book comes out this month. Very good. Kind of a alternate universe where Jade is magical type environment, and it's very dark and creepy, and but it's great. And then I'm finally reading Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and I know I should have read this ages ago, but it's very good. Lesbian necromancers in space. Don't know how that passed me by.
I mean, again,
I'm reading it now.
I didn't have any cosplayers as lesbian necromancers in space, so the sequel will be.
There you go. There you go.
All right, mental note.
But one of my favorite little moments you had in this book just really resonated with me too, because it was really personal, is you have a moment where they all toast Jeff Goldblum. When they're talking about how scientists are like maligned in science fiction or ignored, and then everyone just takes a moment and toasts to Jeff Goldblum's success.
Yep. Yeah. Everybody loves him. I mean, come on, it's Jeff Goldblum.
To Goldblum. All right, let me see. So last, just to kind of close things out, again, we've made it through without crying, which frankly, I'm pretty proud of ourselves because we came real close at one point.
Yeah.
Still might happen though, because what I thought was so great in the book, that made, so I'm like kind of a wreck while I'm reading it. And I actually started kind of diving into it while I was at a coffee shop outside. But it was the first time I'd cried in public while reading a book since 2019. So thank you for that. But it really hits like the perfect kind of closing thoughts, I guess, as the whole thing's kind of wrapping up, about relationships and how people come into your lives, but there's so many more that come and go but some stay, and how that relates to pop culture. And I don't want to take over the whole thing. So do you want to kind of close out that thought and where that came from? Because that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I thought there's a billion pop culture things out there. But I don't want to say you always have your favorites, but sometimes you do. And sometimes some of them speak to you in ways that you need them to speak to you at the time. And that can come and go, really. Sometimes you see a movie or a TV show when you're at a formative age and it sticks with you. Sometimes you see something or you read something, because this book is full of book references too, or you play a video game, or a board game, and something is going on in your life. So whatever you're doing is attached to that experience, and that sticks with you too. And I thought that's a lot like people. I think some people come into your lives exactly when they should, and for reasons that you may not know about when they first arrive. And you can meet thousands of people in a year in your life, and they can come and go, and that's okay. There are acquaintances and there are friends, and I think, despite what Facebook says, when you have a friend, that's something incredibly, incredibly precious. And you recognize that. And if you're lucky, you both recognize that. And that sticks with you, and you're bonded over that. And you could go 6 months a year without seeing each other. You could go 6 months a year without watching your favorite movie. But the minute you're together, the minute you're watching a movie, it all comes back. And you have comfort, and you have hope, and you have connection. And I think that's what is going through us all. It's what keeps us together. And I thought that was really important.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a perfect note to end it on, because now you've reminded me that it's been about 6 months since I've watched Galaxy Quest, and and you and I will meet up for a drink, because I'm very grateful that you are one of those friends that I met at a convention.
Me too. Me too. We'll have a watch party.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for having us.
Thanks, Erin.
Oh, that is so sweet. Now I really want to go back to a convention. Thanks, guys.
That's really why I was weeping the whole time.
You did make me think of one real fun, quick story I want to share, just because it's so super fun. You all shared your stories. I was waiting in line at Ballroom 20 at San Diego Comic-Con. We're in San Diego. I bit into a hot dog, and I chipped my tooth on a hot dog. That was fun.
Oh. Oh.
Anyway, let's leave it on that note. Before I forget, is there anything that you're working on, Rob, that you want to plug or talk about right now?
Oh my gosh. There's a bunch I'm working on that I can't talk about, and that kills me. But for the nerds out there, the Star Trek Starfleet is in stores. I'm sure it's in Mysterious Galaxy right now. So that's all about Star Trek. Next spring is the Star Trek Book of Friendship, which is really, really exciting. And that's got a foreword by Robert Picardo and Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager. And I think in December, because things were sort of shifted because of supply chain issues, but the Star Trek Book of Grudge is coming out. So it's all about the cat from Star Trek Discovery. Awesome. And if you're looking for a really good holiday stocking stuffer, try I'm Dreaming of a Chris for Christmas, which is a coloring and activity book, all with the holiday and Hollywood Chris's. So Hemsworth and Pratt and Reds, they're all in there.
I love it.
Buy it at Mysterious Galaxy.
Yes, please. Because your sales help us keep us doing this.
Awesome.
where can people find you on socials?
Erin, you want to go first?
Sure. People can find me on Twitter at Dr. Erin Mac, DRERINMAC, and that's the easiest place.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ms. Mazeppa, MSMAZEPPA, and Instagram at Robb Pearlman. That's best.
Awesome. And as a reminder, everyone who's interested in buying this awesome book here that I am holding, please go ahead and hit the button at the bottom that says buy books. I
There you
passed it
go.
over there to the screen. Hit the button that says buy books with signed personalized book plate. Rob is very kind enough to be providing book plates. What those are, for those who don't know, are basically little stickers that you can put in your book if you want, or it's a cool bookmark. He'll sign, he'll also personalize. Yes, so please go ahead and do that for this wonderful book. And any of the other books that we're discussed and put in our chat by our lovely bookseller, Kellyanne, who has been the ghost host, typing most of it. Yeah, please do. Otherwise, thank you everyone for tuning in. And Rob, now we can send you off to bed. So I know you're on the East Coast.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.